Public Library Authority Board. Clerk, may you please call the roll?
Roger Dickinson. Here. Karina Talamontes. Here. Phil Pluckybaum. Katie Maple.
Here.
Mai Vang.
Here.
Phil Cerna. Patrick Kennedy. Rich Desmond. Rosario Rodriguez. Pat Hume. Mary Jane Lopez Taff.
Here.
Rod Brewer.
Here.
Kevin Spees.
Present.
Tim Reed. Joe Little.
Here.
Tanya Kravchuk.
Here.
Vina Lefkowitz.
Here.
Nick Blois.
Here.
This meeting of the Sacramento Public Library Authority is broadcast live and recorded with closed captioning. It is cablecast on Metro Cable Channel 14, the local government affairs channel on the Comcast and DirecTV UVerse cable systems. It is also live streamed at metro14live.saccounty.gov. Today's meeting replays Saturday, May 24th at 4 p.m. on Metro Cable Channel 14. Once posted, the recording of this meeting can be viewed on demand at youtube.com/metrocable14. The meeting will also be recorded via Zoom. A DVD copy will be available upon request no later than 2 weeks following today's meeting. The full agenda, including reports, is available on the library website at www.saclibrary.org. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should complete a speaker identification form located at the back table and give it to the clerk. Members attending via Zoom should raise their hand in the Zoom program. Please speak clearly when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Comments are limited to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard.
Thank you, Clerk. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise if you are able. And Director Vang, could you lead us in the pledge today?
I'll do it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Maple.
Salute.
So we'll move on to item number 2, public comment on matters not on the agenda. I do not have any cards in front of me. So we'll move to item 3.1 for presentations. Friends of the Sacramento Public Library.
Hello, everyone. My name is Devon Graves, and I serve as the Vice President for the Friends of the Sacramento Public Library. We represent community members across the Sacramento region who are passionate and love our library. So I want to kick it off real quick with some great news that we are happy to share, that being that Big Day of Giving took place at the beginning of this month, and the Friends of the Sacramento Public Library were able to break our record and raise $117,000 on behalf of the library. It's a record for our organization, and this money is going to support programs at the library. So we are so excited. We want to make sure to thank the friends from across the region, our affiliates who committed to this work. I want to thank my colleague who's on Zoom with us right now, Diane Gregory, who led these efforts. Diane, thank you so much. This would not have happened without your leadership. Want to thank the library again for their partnership. Peter and his team, Lisa and Jessica, thank you so much for the communications efforts and for sending out the email to patrons so that they can know that this was taking place. And then, of course, to the JPA, I want to thank the members who personally donated, those who got the word out, shared our post on social media. Thank you. We are so happy for these efforts, and we hope to keep up these efforts in the years going forward. But this is exciting time. We'll do the check presentation at a future meeting. Numbers get finalized for the official fundraising account, so we'll get to discuss this again at a later point. But I do want to highlight that the board did meet, our board of directors met on May 13th, and we discussed a couple issues that we wanted to make sure that the JPA were aware of. The Arcade Library made a request for funds that we approved, and we look forward to continuing to support the work there. And also, we had a great discussion about affiliate merger between the Franklin and Elk Grove Friends. The Franklin Friends have really struggled with membership, and so Elk Grove Friends have taken on partnership with them to work together. So that is some work that we are excited to see that those individuals will be working together to support the library. Also, we had a great presentation from Lisa Martinez and Director Coyle about the work going forth about changes to the logo to the library. We really look forward to ongoing conversations, and we believe we benefit with our joint logo that we get to use in partnership with the library. And I think that was helpful in the success for Big Day of Giving. So we want to continue to have some great conversations about what that looks like in the future. And then lastly, we wanted to just use a little bit of time to talk about our book den. And so at the podium right now in person, Pam, our fearless leader, who is the manager of our book den, is going to take a little bit of time just to talk about the book den to make sure that members of the JPA are aware of the work that we have going on there. So if you would allow, Mr. Chair, if my colleague Pam could say a few words about the work that goes on at the book den, we would greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, Devon. And Pam, the floor is yours.
Is our volunteer coordinator at the book den, and between the two of us, we pretty much run the operation. She's out in the warehouse, I'm in the front. I say that my job is to pay the bills and buy the donuts, and Diane takes care of the people back there. But I want to thank you for the chance to talk about my favorite subject, which is the book den, and also to let you know that our focus is selling books and making money for the library, and we're doing very well. We just had 2 bag sales recently, and we made over $10,000 selling bags of books for $6 each. We had a number of, just a lot of new members, and I think that is primarily because we have one of our volunteers, Sabrina Hill, who has taken over doing our Facebook, and she also got us on Instagram and Reddit, and apparently that brings in a lot of younger, newer people, and so we really did well. We're $30,000 over last year's sales at this time. So it's a wonderful thing. But what I want you to know is that we're more than just a used bookstore. We have the store in the warehouse. We're a community partner. And one of the things we do is we're a resource for book donations to a lot of organizations. We give them to hospitals, nursing homes, food banks. The jail and the prison are regular customers of ours, which we donate to them all the time. We get enough donations in that we can do this. We do it for mental health clinics in schools. We've donated hundreds of books to the school classrooms and the libraries because a lot of them, either their libraries have closed or they just don't have enough, or the teachers are trying to build their classroom libraries. This last year, we gave 15 boxes to Read Across America of children's books, and we helped 17 different school classrooms and libraries to fill their shelves in their books. There's an organization called Angels in the Field, and we donate to them, and they work with the children of farm workers, and they provide them with books. We also helped one of the VFW lodges to fill out their military resource library by donating a lot of military history books, which we get a lot of. But we're not just doing local donations. We have people coming from other countries that are trying to get their libraries stable or to set them up. And we have donated books to Guatemala, Kenya, Malawi, Mongolia, Mexico, the Philippines, Ghana, and Brooklyn. I say Brooklyn because there's a little bookstore in Brooklyn whose the owner's mother buys books from us and sends them to her son in Brooklyn because we can get books here that they can't in Brooklyn. So we're subsidizing them in a way too. Also this year we're going to be at Burning Man. There's not physically, but bookly. They're doing a project where they're building out of books a library, a replica of a library. So we've been donating to them books that normally would go into the discard bins. So we consider it, and Anita coined this term, it's a community redistribution of books. We get a lot in, and we are able to sell a lot and support the library, but we're also able to support the community. Anybody that comes in and says that they have an organization that's trying to get books out, especially to children, we will be more than happy to donate. One of the other things we do, and this is Diane's area, is we work with special needs adults and students. She works with the coaches and the volunteers. And Diane, you want to tell them the two organizations that you are with?
We work with an organization called In Alliance. We work with an organization called In Alliance, which supports adults with disabilities. We have a man who has been coming to the Book Den almost as long as I have. I'd say he's been there 10 years, and he comes with a job coach, but he could probably do it on his own. Yeah. And we also work with, we're just started working with another agency called Ascend, which also has the same goal to help adults with disabilities to get out into the community and to learn job skills. And they're a part of our volunteer team. We're really happy to have them. And
it really works out well with Diane doing this because she's a retired special education teacher. So it helps her work with the regular volunteers and with the other groups too. We also bring in students that need community service hours, and they're able to come in for their school or their college, and they can work as few or as many hours as they need. We're willing to give them a reference after they've been there, so they can come in and do a little bit of work. They can get a reference for that. They also get free books, for working there. Everybody gets free books when they work there. Right now we have about 140 active volunteers during the week with the Book Den. We're open Monday through Saturday. 3 days of the week is our work days. The other 3 days, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, the Book Den is open for shopping. But we have volunteers there all the time, including in the internet. We sell on Amazon and eBay. And the wonderful thing about the Book Den is people come in that are volunteers when they're not even scheduled because they just like the contact. It's a very low stress, easy place to come. We do a lot of chatting, a lot of talking about things, and the volunteers like to come in because it gives them some place to go and to just hang out. We have regular customers that are the same way. They come in, they'll buy 1 or 2 books, but they like to stand and talk because some of them are...
Yeah, that's me muted.
Pardon? Oh, but some of them are very, are kind of lonely, and it's not unusual to get a phone call from one of them asking a question about donating and then spending 15 minutes on the phone with them, just talking about what's going on with them. So it's really a very community-oriented organization. So I just wanted people to know they think that it's just a bookstore, but we're not just a bookstore. We're out there with the community. Our main focus is supporting the library, but we also provide a lot of things for a lot of people in the community. And we're going to be at the Sacramento Book Festival this next Saturday with a lot of authors. So I just appreciate the chance to talk about and let you know that we are more than just a nice little bookstore. So I don't know if you have any questions or anything, but I would suggest coming by and checking it out.
Thank you, Pam. Directors, do we have any comments or questions? Director Maple.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for your work and for your volunteer hours and for your energy that goes into the community. And it's clear that you're very passionate about it. And obviously, it has a wide reach, wider than I thought, to Brooklyn and beyond.
Yep.
And so just want to thank you for that. And I certainly do want to come by. And so I will, I have your contact information through our director, and I will make some time on my schedule and love to come by and see it. Thank you.
And we have more than books. We have vinyl records, CDs, DVDs, VHS. We do get cassettes. We have magazines. We have all of it.
And puzzles.
And puzzles and games. Lots of puzzles and games. Yeah.
It's full service right there.
Absolutely.
Director Dickinson.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention that many years ago in a former lifetime, I actually served on the board of In Alliance. And it's a terrific organization that, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, as was mentioned, helps those who are developmentally disabled or injured somewhere along in life get and keep jobs and live independently. So it's great to, a lot of them work as busboys or maids in hotels and restaurants, things of that kind. And the results are very gratifying. Mm-hmm. So what's really nice about this connection is that you have reached out to them, connected with them, as well as the other organization, to bring books and materials to them as well. I think that's terrific.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
No, I do want to thank you, Pam and Diane, for your presentation. There's a lot of great information you shared on the Book Den, and also the work that you're doing with the special needs community. That is very commendable, because what you're doing with the Book Den is that you're creating a community within a community, but you're also providing a place for people to go and hang out and just relax. And that's very rare to have. And so I want to thank you for that. Very, very appreciative of knowing that the Book Den is out here doing the work in the community, and with the number of volunteers you have, over 140, and that they come in on their days off or non-scheduled days, that shows you how special that this place is and the type of environment that you both have opened up and created at the Book Den. So that's very commendable. So thank you so much. And Devon, thank you for the presentation. Let's definitely talk offline about the Friends Franklin and the Friends Elk Grove situation. I was talking to my city manager about this last week, and definitely want to follow up with you on that as well. So thank you so much. So now we'll move on to item number 4, Executive Team Report. Director Coyle, floor is yours.
Thank you, Director Brewer, and members of the board for being here today. I want to highlight mostly just one thing in our written report, and that is the new service that we're offering at the Central Library. We have the name is still in development. We haven't quite developed the right name for it, but right now we're calling it a lab. But it is a section of our makerspace at the Central Library, which is designed to help people digitize and preserve their own personal family or historical documents they have, whether it's pictures or videos. I don't know if we go back as far as 8-track, but I know we have a lot of old technology which is in high demand to be turned into new technology. So we've rolled that out at the Central Library. We're very excited to do that, and we are pleased to announce we'll have a similar version at the new North Sacramento Library, courtesy of the Rotary Club of North Sacramento. They provided a generous grant for us to have one at that location, as well as expand our Library of Things to that location when it opens. So we're very excited to have that on the docket for that new library when it opens. This is a trend we're seeing nationwide as people are learning that formats that we thought were forever are not. I don't know if you ever had the chance to open up an old microfilm or microfiche drawer at the library. Those things disintegrate. It has a particular smell, actually. And so archivists and librarians are very keen to preserve magnetic tape and other things. And so these are options for people to come in and digitize their old photos and documents in modern formats so that they can preserve them. Because we know once that tape disintegrates, you can't get it back, or that CD is scratched. So we're really excited about that as a community resource. So we'll be providing more information in a presentation to the board as we have more experience with that. So we're really excited about that. We took some best practices from people across the country, and I think we have a great setup. And I want to acknowledge our staff who have spearheaded that project. Number of things in the written report which I won't belabor, but we're moving forward with, as was discussed, our new website and our brand. Lisa Martinez, our communications manager, and her team have been working very hard on this, and we expect to have both those completed hopefully by the end of the year. I hope I haven't just jinxed anything by saying that, but I think we're on schedule to do that. And I'd also just highlight the media report in our executive team report, the media reports of our activities that our communications team works very hard. These are not stories normally that come to us. We send out information to our media affiliates, and our communications team does a lot of work to get this information out to the public. So I just wanted to highlight the great work that they're doing in our community to promote the library. And I think with that, I will end my report and answer any questions that might be present.
Thank you, Director Coyle. Vice Chair Maple?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say quickly, I was very excited to hear about the family history component. I am a big nerd in this way and in others, but that's one of the ways. And I actually at one time traveled to Salt Lake City, Utah to visit the family history library there so that I could learn more about my family history, and have since been just really interested in that in general. So I cannot wait to be able to use that technology or whatever we might be doing there, and for myself, and to share that with my constituents. So thank you.
Thanks.
Now, for the music library that you have, you go all the way back to 8-track.
Well, I wouldn't say a music library necessarily. We have the equipment to play and convert certain media formats. Now, whether that's music or whatnot, that's your choice. I don't know if we have I think we don't have an 8-track. I think we go back to VHS, maybe not Betamax, because some of these equipment it's not made anymore, and we actually had to purchase these secondhand and on eBay and other places because they're just not made. So our staff have done a really good job of beating the bushes for these things. But I can ask if we can convert your 8-track, Director Brewer. I'm not sure if we can, but we can definitely give it a try.
Because I have a couple of those in reserves, a couple of boxes. So might need a little assistance with that.
We'll be in touch about that.
Good deal. Good deal. Any other questions from directors online or here on the dais? Hearing and seeing none, we will move forward. Thank you again, Director Coyle. Number 5 is information. Have any questions from any of the directors on any of the reports that we have on here? Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to consent. Consent, we have 11 items on today's agenda. Looking for public comment. Seeing none in the audience or online. Any questions from any of the directors? Hearing.
Yes, we have a couple.
Okay.
Mary Jane Lopez Taft, and I have a question on items 6.9 and 610. So let me know when you're ready to address each one.
We are ready, Director Taft.
Thank you. For 6.9, it is a contract amendment for waste management services, and I'm looking at it. And if my math serves me correctly, it is an increase of $110,000 in the current year, or is that spread out? So it's mainly a question. Is it spread out from this year to the extended contract? And if so, is our budget reflecting that change? And if not, where are the extra dollars coming from?
Yes, it's for the full contract extended term, and it is reflected in the proposed budget.
For next year or the amendment for this current fiscal year?
So it's for reflected in this current fiscal year and also factored into future budget years.
Okay, thank you. And for 6.10, contract amendment, landscaping services. So it looks like And this is my general comment here. It looks like it's been extended for a couple of years, but you are trending upward from 1.2, I believe. I forget the exact number. I didn't write it in my notes, but it is an overall increase of $900,000 for the entire contract. And same question as before, is that portion attributed to this fiscal year and then the balance for next fiscal year, or what are the details on that?
So the projects, this fiscal year, we are effectively done with our landscaping projects. Moving into next fiscal year, we have critical projects for county locations to bring them in compliance with crime prevention through environmental design initiatives, as well as zero-scaping those sites. And so those are factored into next year's budget.
Okay, thank you. I'm satisfied, and I believe there's another director who has a question.
Yes, there is. Thank you, Director Taff. Now we go to Director Lefkowitz.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm in support of all the items. I just had a few comments. One is, I thought it looked like several of the contracts are being extended rather than bid out. And the rationale given was very logical and made sense, but it seemed like quite a few were being extended rather than bid out. And I was just curious how it felt a little uncomfortable to me if we have a public bid process and then we keep extending contracts, even though your rationale is correct. So I didn't know if other board members had any reaction to that, but I did. I just wanted to share it. I did notice it. So that was one comment. And if anyone shared that like observation and had any reflection on it, I'd love to hear that. So that was my first. And then my second is around the policy related to the revised collection development policy. And, you know, I was happy we have this policy. It was interesting to learn that the director of the library is the one that oversees makes all the decisions about the collection. And one thing it made me think about, given the diversity of our community, kind of goes back to a comment I made a while ago, which is there any way to collect data about who our library users actually are, what their ages are, what their ethnicities are? I just feel like it would help us get a sense of who's using our libraries, who's not using our libraries, and how does our collection actually best reflect that the communities who either are in Sacramento or who are card holders. So I'll just put that back out there. If other board members agree it's something we should be looking at as a library system, again, I'd be interested in hearing if I'm just a single or if other people share that feeling.
So I think that's on top of Director Lefkowitz's question on the second part. Do we collect data? Because when people come in, it's a free flow. And you really can't do a little clicker or do surveys while people are in the middle of doing either their book search or doing their job search on the internet or whatever they are there for. But there is no way of really culling data to show who our consumers are.
Director, you're correct. We do collect birth dates when we register customers. They provide that. We do not collect any other demographic information. We may collect gender. I don't know if we do that anymore or not, but we don't collect any other racial or language makeup in terms of the registration form. I can say that what we do is we do compare census data to our collection, and we have a number of products which will analyze the collection and share based on subject or biographical information of languages, how we compare. So we can definitely share what percentage of our collection reflects a certain population in theme or topic or language. And it may not be, quite frankly, apples to apples, simply because of the publishing market. A majority of materials published are in English in America. So we often struggle with finding materials in this country, but our staff do a fantastic job of getting materials from overseas. We send staff to Book Fair in Mexico to interface with vendors and publishers in South and Latin America. And so we do our best to acquire materials that reflect the community, but we don't make an effort to make sure it's one-to-one. I think that that's a Herculean task, but I think we do the best we can with the resources we have. I don't know of any library that does collect other demographic information simply because of the process of doing that. And then we'd have to, of course, have the staff that would process and analyze that too. So there's a work factor in there as well. But we're happy to provide information to the board about our collection demographics. We have some vendors that can provide that, and we can work towards providing that towards the end of the summer.
Yeah, because the census tract data gives you a good aggregate sense of the area that you are in. The foot traffic that comes in is going to be a fraction of that.
Yeah,
so it kind of skews exactly what you're trying to go after to that extent, right?
Yeah, and Director Brewer, we also find that members of the library use other libraries around in them as well. So there's a lot of cross-pollination, for lack of a better term, that happens. So we look at the county as a whole and try and serve the county versus serving each library. However, we do, in areas where there are other populations, provide certain languages and other things meeting that immediate need, but we don't necessarily have a collection of, I'll just say, Chinese language materials in every location, but we might have it populated in certain specific areas.
Got it.
Yeah.
Director Dickinson.
Thanks. I was just going to say, in response to Director Lefkowitz's question, I do think it makes sense on a periodic basis to rebid as opposed to just extend. And I typically look at 3 to 5 years. It depends on the length of the contract, but the 3 to 5 year range. And sometimes there are factors which suggest or dictate that it just be an extension even with that time period. But I think as a general proposition or rule of operation, it's a good idea to test the market periodically as a public agency.
Yeah, and if I might address that, and I'll let Jared speak as well to this, that we do generally try to do that. Sometimes the length of the bid process can be arduous, and that's not a reason to not bid. But we do try and extend contracts when the provider is doing a good job and we don't have a need to bid it out in terms of satisfaction and cost. And there's some other reasons I think Jared can speak to as well.
Yeah, and as cited in the staff reports, in this case, to Peter's credit, we always do try to go out to competitive bid, but we have also been in this unique situation where we've had a lot of project delays due to the pandemic and due to supply issues and labor shortages in all transparency. And we're seeing this across the industry. And in some cases, we have projects that have started with a vendor and they're still in process. And it does not, at this point in time, it's not feasible to change the vendor. As you can see, we plan to rebid these within the next year. So we are definitely committed to that process, except we're in this unique situation where we had vendors who are already in the queue. These projects are in the queue and rolling. And unfortunately, due to a lot of supply chain, labor, and other factors, unfortunately, we would have liked to have rebid them, but due to the projects, to halt them would be just detrimental at this point in time.
No, I definitely understand that. But to Director Dickinson and Director Lefkowitz's perspective and assessment, we probably want to, as we move forward 3-5 years down the road, definitely do what we can to open bids up for services, because the last thing that we would want to have is to have someone saying that we are doing sole source bidding and sole source contracting, and that's not the intent and that's not the intention. but we definitely want to avoid that at all costs 3-5 years down the road when there is an opportunity. You may find another service or another vendor who's providing equal service and probably doing it for a little better bang for the buck. We definitely want to avoid that perception at all costs because you're doing great work, but the worst thing you could do is to have someone say that I didn't get a contract because the library is operating under sole source contracting, and that's not the intent, but you want to avoid that at all costs.
Yes, Director, and it may have been inarticulate when I was speaking, but I will say also that most of the contracts that we sign only allow us to extend for 5 years total, and then we're required to rebid. So we certainly do that as well. And so we hear that, and we, as Director Keller said, we are planning to rebid most of these this next year.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. So it looks like we've asked all the questions on the dais. Do we have any online? Hearing and seeing none, I'm looking for a motion and a second for the consent.
I will second.
Director Talamontes with the first, Vice Chair Maple with the second, and because we have folks online, Madam Clerk, may you please call the roll.
Roger Dickinson. Aye. Karina Talamontes. Aye. Phil Pluckybaum. Katie Maple.
Aye.
Mai Vang.
Yes.
Phil Cerna. Patrick Kennedy. Rich Desmond. Rosario Rodriguez. Pat Hume. Mary Jane Lopez Taff. Mary Jane Lopez Taff.
I apologize. Aye.
Rod Brewer.
Aye.
Kevin Spees.
Aye.
Tim Reed. Joe Little.
Yeah.
Tanya Kravchuk.
Aye.
Bina Vlefkovitz.
Yes.
Nick Blois.
Aye.
And motion passes with 9 members voting.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item number 7. Item 7.1, supplemental funding use approval, County of Sacramento. Director Keller.
Oh. How do we do?
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so today for your approval is item 7.1, supplemental funding from Sacramento County. So a little bit, as everybody's aware, back in 2021, the California State Library introduced the Building Forward Infrastructure Grant Program. It was a one-time $489 million infrastructure project for California public libraries. The California State Library did a survey and determined that there is over $2 billion in outstanding infrastructure need for California public library buildings. So this was a historic once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Grant funded everything from public safety to new buildings to critical infrastructure upgrades. The building owners, the library jurisdictions in this case, were responsible for applying and responsible for the grant. They could request up to $10 million. The Sacramento Public Library, in partnership with the jurisdictions, did incredibly well, as reported in the past. Sacramento Public Library was one of the highest recipients of grants from the grant program. Most notably, the city of Elk Grove received $4.4 million for the new Elk Grove Library. The city of Sacramento, who was the rock star of our jurisdictions, received over $15.1 million. Notably, they received money for the retrofit of the Sacramento News and Review building into the new North Sacramento Hagenwood Library, as well as critical funding for the rehabilitation of the Martin Luther King Jr. Library. And the Sacramento County received over $2.7 million for critical infrastructure upgrades, specifically for the Fair Oaks, Southgate, Sylvan Oaks, Walnut Grove, Carmichael, North Highlands Antelope, and Arden Dimick libraries. So the County of Sacramento is in the final stages of closing out their grant projects. And right now they're working on the Carmichael, North Highlands, Antelope, and Arden Dimick libraries. As I reported last month, over the course of the summer, we're going to see some closures with these locations. Currently, they've worked on the ADA upgrades. The roof replacement at Carmichael has been completed. The last step of the project is critical HVAC upgrades. Out of all of our 28 locations, these 3 sites have the oldest HVAC systems, and unfortunately, due to their age and current condition, over the years, we've had to close down these libraries when temperatures soar over 100 degrees. As you know, that's quite a common occurrence here in Sacramento. Through the course of the project, the county, much like the city of Sacramento, ran into escalating costs with the North Sacramento Hagewood Library and the Martin Luther King Jr. Library. The County of Sacramento is also running into problems with this HVAC funding, and there's a funding gap right now. The original grant award of $1.7 million to replace the HVAC systems at these locations is no longer sufficient. Costs have swelled to over $3.39 million. This is attributed to global supply chain, California clean energy goals, as well as availability of components has really added to the cost. So now there is a $1.69 million funding gap that the County of Sacramento has to close. Otherwise, they have to give the grant funds back. And this is obviously nothing that we want to see happens. So per the JPA, supplemental funding was established under Section 11C, subsection 5 of the 2007 JPA to support enhanced library services and capital improvements. Each party to the JPA, that's the County of Sacramento, Citrus Heights, Galt, Ileton, Elk Grove, and Rancho Cordova, excluding the City of Sacramento, who chose not to participate in supplemental funding, is allocated an annual supplemental funding amount, which is held in reserve by the Library Authority for jurisdiction-specific use to enhance library services. These funds provide jurisdictions with a flexible tool for targeted investment beyond base funding, and in partnership and under the guidance of the Library Authority, may be used for additional open hours, expanded collection, maintenance, repairs, and facility improvements. Recent funding request examples, we've seen enhanced hours in county locations. Most recently, last year, the City of Elk Grove requested its supplemental funding to help with the construction of the new Elk Grove Library. We've also seen collection expansions use as well. Currently, there's $3.86 million in the supplemental fund account for the County of Sacramento. They're requesting $1.69 million for the HVAC project, which will leave a remaining balance of $2.17 million. So what we're recommending is that the Authority Board approve Resolution Number 2536, authorizing the $1.6 million from the Unincorporated County Supplemental Fund to support the Building Forward Infrastructure Grant deficiency, so that we can move forward so the county can move forward with the HVAC replacements. Doing this will provide critical infrastructure improvements for those sites. It'll make a much more comfortable buildings for not only staff but for the public, and it will also mean that the county does not have to give back these critical once-in-a-lifetime funds. So that being said, thank you.
We have a motion by Director Talamontes affirmatively. But
Anyone from the county here to comment?
so seeing that we have no comments from the audience, I'm going to turn it back over to the dais. Director Dickinson, you have a lineup here. Would you have any comments or questions? Because you're on the line right now.
Having been very involved in the funding and the construction of the North Highlands Antelope Library, I have a very soft spot in my heart for it, and so only because that's included in this request, I'm not going to support this because there's no one supervisors here.
But he's supervisor emeritus, like vice chair.
One
Maple
supervisor, always supervisor.
Right.
said. Yeah. Right, call roll.
So yeah, so we have a first from Director Talamontes, a second from Director Dickinson. Boaz, one more time. Any questions from any directors online? And hearing and seeing none, Clerk, may we please call the roll?
Roger Dickinson.
Aye.
Karina Talamontes.
Aye.
Phil Pluckybaum. Katie Maple.
Aye.
Mai Vang.
Yes.
Phil Cerna. Patrick Kennedy. Rich Desmond. Rosario Rodriguez. Pat Hume. Mary Jane Lopez Taff.
Yes.
Rod Brewer.
Aye.
Kevin Spees.
Aye.
Tim Reed. Joe Little,
Yes.
Tanya Kravchuk,
Aye.
Dina Lefkowitz,
Yes.
Nick Blois.
Aye.
Motion passes with 8 members voting.
Thank you, Clerk. So now I move on to item 7.2, fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed budget, position control, fee structure, and cost allocation plan. Mr. Johnny, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Brewer and members of the board. So this agenda item is the fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget, position controls, fee structures, and cost allocation plan. So there's a lot of information in the board packet, lots of numbers. So I'm going to try to highlight the budget in a short PowerPoint presentation, but feel free to ask any questions along the way. So just quickly, as a quick reminder, the library is funded by 3 major funding sources. One is from the County of Sacramento property taxes. We are projecting to come in at about 59.5%. And then the City of Sacramento General Fund and Measure U at about 19.4%. And then Power Sale Tax Measure X, which was recently approved by the voters in this past November election. So Power Sale Tax Measure E is effective July 1, 2025. So as you'll recall, Measure E consolidates the existing Measure X and Measure B into one revenue sources. And then the remaining 4.6%, miscellaneous income from fees, investment earnings, gallery revenue, E-rate reimbursements, and central distribution, and miscellaneous donations. So the budget as proposed shows a total revenue of $63.2 million, total expenditures of $68.8 million, for a structural deficit of $5.6 million. So the $5.6 million is mainly due to 3 primary reasons. So one is the one-time half of the $4 million General Fund and Measure U diversion for the Martin Luther King and North Sacramento projects. These are budget shortfalls within the City of Sacramento's budget. So the $2 million is for fiscal year 26, and then another $2 million in fiscal year 27 for in terms of revenue diversion for the projects. And then also there's about $1.9 million in one-time City of Sacramento expenditures, and these are for needed projects such as the router refresh, AMHS machines, upgrades at the King and North Sacramento libraries, security camera system upgrades, and then the brand re-signage project as well too. And then the other difference is the $1.7 million, as Deputy Director Jarrett had described earlier in the last presentation. So the $1.7 million, that is for the 3 HVAC project within the County of Sacramento. So as Jarrett mentioned, these monies are available in our supplemental fund reserves. So the money is earmarked for these kind of projects and expenditures. So the pie charts gives you a quick visual on the revenue sources and expenditures. So again, county property tax revenues at about 59.5%. City of Sacramento General Fund and Measure U at 19.4%. Power Sale Tax Measure E at about 16.5%. And miscellaneous revenues at about 4.6%. On the flip side, the salaries are showing about 55.3% for salaries and benefits. Services and supplies at roughly 30%. Books and materials at about 12.2%. And capital projects at about 2.6%. Exhibit A1, this is a good 3-year flow of fund balances. So the past, present, and future fund balances. So last year we ended the year at as of June 30, 2024, at about 67.7 million. And then in the current year, we are anticipating revenues to close the books at about almost 64 million, and expenditures at about 60.4 million. So anticipated fund balances will be roughly about 71.2 million as of fiscal year June 30, 2025. And then looking ahead into next fiscal year, so fiscal year 25-26, staff is projecting the total revenues of about 63.1 million and expenditures of about 68.8 million. And then the second to the last column, cash flow and economic uncertainty reserves column. So as you recall, the board had adopted a cash flow and economic uncertainty reserve policy to maintain 35% for the county reserves. This is mainly due to how the county pays the library with property taxes. And then the city of Sacramento are set at 17% because the city pays the libraries on a monthly basis. And then lastly, the last column is the unreserved fund balances, projected to be at June 30, 2026, to be a total of 47.7 million. And then, so what's important on the schedule is I'd like to point out Measure X and Measure B. Revenues are showing projected to be zero, and whereas expenditures are a high amount. So the spending priority is we would spend Measure X, Measure B, Measure X first, and then any residual spending will come from Measure E. So once we close the books for, as of June 30, 2026, Measure X and B will be fully spent, and then Measure E will be the only parcel tax for the city of Sacramento going forward. So yeah, this is going to be a transitional year. There's so many different revenue codes for all 28 library branches, all the salaries and benefit codes. So it's going to be a lot of work for the staff, but we are going to close out the books and only maintain Measure E as of June 30, 2026. And then just really quick, Exhibit A2, this is a summary of the total funding sources and expenditures as well, too. So again, a net of negative 5.6 million in use of fund balance. Exhibit A3, this is the revenue sources in a bit more detail. So just really quick, the total revenues are projected to be at 63.1 million. And of that amount, the County of Sacramento / City Fund is anticipated coming at 38.4 million. And then you'll notice that the county contributions in the form of property taxes shows a 1.6 million increase, roughly about 4.5%. So that's the good news. The property values are still holding its values and staying strong. And we do communicate with the county assessor to come up with these percentages as well also. And then on the city of Sacramento side, we're going from 14.3 million city contributions to about 12.3 million. So again, the $2 million one-time revenue diversion for the two projects. And then Measure X and Measure B, again, we are going to close out the books and fold those two funds into Measure E by the time we close the books as of June 30, 2026. And then on the expenditure side, very similar to revenues, the county is anticipated to spend about 40.1 million. City of Sacramento at 16.8 million, Measure X at 9.8 million, and Measure B at 1.8 million. Again, as you notice, we try to balance the budget where we know the city general fund and Measure U is going to be short by 2 million. We're trying to close out Measure X and Measure B, so we moved some expenditures around to close out the two funds, and then absorb any differences, for City of Sacramento general fund as well too. So the total expenditures is anticipated to be about 68.8 million combined. And then last exhibit, Exhibit A5. This is for the Library Books and Materials Fund. So collections is one of our main highlights of our operations. So we want to make sure we maintain a fairly good budget. So the 8.4 million has always been the budget for the last probably 4 years at the very least. So we wish we could do more, but this is a really good budget for now. So Exhibit B, position control. So the total number of FTEs remain the same, but there's some recommended title changes, and I'm going to toss it to Director Coyle for additional information.
Great, thanks, Johnny. This is straightforward, members of the board. We are trying to recruit for a new deputy director and a new human resource manager. And under the advice and guidance of our human resource consultants, we've looked at the market, and based on the titles that we currently offer, they don't portray the level of responsibility that those positions have, specifically the human resource manager. And further, the duties of our executive team encompass a lot of regulatory and statutory requirements, some more than others, but all of them have a component within either California or federal law that we're required to comply with. And so we are proposing, and I hope that the board will adopt these title changes. These are title changes only. The salary is not changing for any of these positions, but we are simply adjusting the titles and position control. This will then allow us to recruit in the coming months for what we will call our Chief Human Resource Officer, and then the Deputy Director, who we'll call the Chief Public Services Officer. We'll note one thing: the Human Resource Manager one is, or in the written report, it is wrong. The 1 and the 2 should be switched. It should come 2 and then 1. That's an error that I perpetuated when I made it. It just continued, and I didn't realize that until today, so my apologies to the members of the board for that. But we're definitely want to be very clear about what these responsibilities of these jobs are. I'll just use an example. Johnny, when he attends meetings with our counterpart other agencies, his peers are all they're not budget managers or finance managers. They're the CFO of the county or higher positions. And as an independent joint powers authority, I think it's appropriate for our executive team to have titles that are commensurate with their responsibilities and correlate to our partner agencies as well. So this doesn't encompass any fiscal impact. This is purely a name change for title and position control only. And Johnny, if you want to go to the next slide. So just in terms of organization, the organization is currently structured here, and then, Johnny, the next slide, it'll just change the titles of them. And so really that's all we're doing. So I'm happy to answer questions about that specifically, but I just wanted to highlight that this change is here and bring it to the board's attention so that you were fully aware that that's a change we're making or requesting the board to authorize us to make.
So this completes our budget presentation?
No, I think Johnny still has a couple more words to say. So,
Yeah,
but I just wanted to highlight this aspect of it.
Yeah, because we'll have Johnny wrap up, and then we'll come back and ask questions.
Sounds great.
There.
Thank you, Director Coyle. So Chair Brewer, there's a couple more slides. So again, this is the position control slide. There's still going to be 342.5 FTEs. Again, just title changes. No additional FTEs requested at this time. And then Exhibit C, no changes recommended. Staff is recommending that we continue to collect fees only for lost books. We've waived fines for late books during the COVID days, and that was to create equity and encourage people to come back to the library once we reopen. So the Galleria and meeting room rentals or reservations, that's still another fee that we continue to collect. And then on the capital and capital projects in the field maintenance side, we have a total $1.8 million budget. So of that amount, $800,000 is for system-wide security camera systems upgrade, $500,000 for the 2 automated material handling systems at the Martin Luther King Jr. and the North Sacramento Hagenwood Library expansion projects, and then $500,000 for router replacements. And then lastly, Exhibit D, the cost allocation plan. So the cost plan is updated annually by a outside consultant. This is followed by the guidelines of Title II Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200. So essentially, the cost plan allows us to allocate our indirect charges within our shared cost fund to the operating fund. So indirect charges includes, directors, department, IT, facilities, finance, human resources, collection services. So this allows us to allocate proportionally to the other operating funds within the library budget. So if you take a look at the table at the bottom, we typically use a 5-year trend, and then this is to avoid any cost volatility year over year. So the last column, so on the last column, there's a 5-year average. So the County of Sacramento Fund will receive 58% of the allocable cost. 26% goes to the City of Sacramento General Fund and Measure U. Funding sources, Measure B at 4% and 12% for Measure X. And then, so last slide, so the total allocable cost is approximately $29 million, and of that amount, 58% goes to the County of Sacramento Fund, which equates to about $17 million. City of Sacramento Measure U and General Fund at about $7.5 million, Measure X, $3.5 million, and Measure B at about $1.2 million. And then future challenges, landscape and security costs continue to increase, as Jared mentioned earlier in the meeting. Inflation affects everybody, not just the library, but pretty much the whole universe. CalPERS continues to ramp up the employee unfunded accrued liabilities. So the next 5 years, we're anticipating about $1 million for increase over the next 5 years. And then the City of Sacramento budget, as you all know, is facing approximately $62.2 million in structural deficit. So that means for the library, our revenue sources are always contingent on how the city does and the budget impacts. And then, as I mentioned earlier, another $2 million is slated to be diverted to the Martin Luther King and North Sacramento renovation project. So again, the 2-year plan is to divert $4 million, so $2 million in fiscal year 26 and another $2 million in fiscal year 27. And then, as previously mentioned when we did the mid-year budget update, previously the city had a forecast that shows a step-up plan to increase the library's funding sources. So at this point, the communication to us is that will be eliminated. So this is not a cut, but it's an opportunity for revenues in terms of future years that's in the tune of about $7.7 million over the next 5 years. So that's the last slide, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Johnny. It's a lot of information to digest and go through, but there's pockets of it, materials and books. That budget's pretty fair, pretty straightforward. The changing of titles, to me, that's pretty straightforward, especially when you benchmark against other similar authorities and staff, how they're and how they are in the market. You see a lot of the transitioning of titles to being chief officers as opposed to being directors, and the semantics is more than that because it's also it carries weight. in the case if someone were to leave and to go to work for another library or another agency, having that title really means a matter of dollars and cents in a large sense. But the changing of that for our purposes makes sense because we've had those titles for a very long time, and it's time to make that transition over. But I'll come back to some of these parts afterwards. No one in the audience for public comment, so I'll turn it over to Director Talamantes.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say I'm highly in support of changing the titles. I think that they're better reflections of the work of this team, the incredible work that you all do. So congrats on the new title, and I'm happy to adopt the budget.
Thank you, Director Talamantes. Director Dickinson.
Thanks. I've got a couple questions and a request. Thanks for the presentation. My first question goes to your cover memo, which says, I'm trying to figure out what page this is on so I could direct you to it. Hang on. Looks like at the bottom of page 2. Staff is recommending the use of fund balance in the amount of $4,181,339, and then it follows on by detailing where roughly $2 million would be used for a variety of things, including the automated material handling systems and other expenses. And then it says approximately $2 million is for a structural imbalance between revenues and expenditures due to the City of Sacramento's $2 million diversion of general fund contribution in FY 25-26 and the rest of the sentence. Can you explain to me how the fact that the City of Sacramento is reducing its contribution, which would have gone into the reserve, presumably constitutes a need to use the reserve? I understand that the reserve would get smaller. I don't understand how it contributes to a movement in your budget that's attributable to use of the fund reserve.
Thank you, Director Dickinson, for that question. So the $2 million diversion is it's essentially a revenue cut, and so without that revenue source, we need to dip into reserve for that $2 million, and then on top of that, there's another $1.9 million in one-time expenditures that is slated to or is in the budget, such as the AMHS machines, the security camera system upgrade, router replacements, and so on. So the $2 million diversion is essentially a cut that required us to dip into reserves to balance out the budget.
But you're going into the reserve to use it to offset expenses that you anticipate will be in excess of revenues. That's not a function of the $2 million less being transferred by the city. That's a function of the fact that expenses would exceed revenues, and therefore you're using part of the reserve, right?
So I guess another way to look at it is if the city does not divert the $2 million, then we would get that $2 million in current revenues, which will offset the current expenditures.
You would just have a larger reserve.
A larger revenue source, because that would be new monies coming in.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to belabor the point. I don't think that's but I will say this. I don't think that's a use of the reserve attributable to the $2 million less. You're using the reserve to compensate for the fact that you're anticipating lower revenues than expenditures, and you need to use reserve to balance that. That has nothing to do with the fact that the city is putting $2 million less into what you're calling the revenues. What that does is it lowers what you otherwise could have as a remaining reserve, which I suspect we agree on the numbers. Maybe it's just the way you've characterized it. But moving on, On Exhibit A1, I appreciate that you included anticipated expenses, really still projected expenses for 24-25, and projected expenses as well as revenues budgeted for 25-26. So thank you for doing that. It's not just budget to budget, which I'll get to in a moment. But just on quick math, if you look at Sacramento City parcel tax X and Sacramento City parcel tax B, and then Sac City E, and you're melding these for 25-26, as you explained with the transfer, but it looks like the expenses from 24-25 to 25-26 are projected in 25-26 to go up by 2.6 million over what they were or what you expect them to be for 24-25. And so my question is whether or not those we're going to incur $2.6 million somehow with the same FTE, and those two fund categories that are getting combined into parcel tax E, or are you using some of that amount to essentially offset the shortfall between revenues in the Sacramento City category between the 13.5 and the 16.7?
So, Director Dickinson, great question, and your last statement answered your question. So measure X and B and E is slightly higher, but if you, as you mentioned on your last statement, City of Sacramento General Fund is about at 2.1 million lower. So we again essentially use the parcel taxes to help balance out the city general fund.
Okay, so you're combining them all?
Yes.
When in there, okay. Then thank you. My other question, actually, I think that's going to be more for Peter. So my request is that with Exhibit A2, because as I understand, we're going to see this again in September after the state does whatever, I guess is when you time it. But in any case, that you add the projected expenses. By then, you'll know your actuals for 24-25, and you add your projected for 25-26, so that we're not just looking budget to budget, because I think it's more meaningful to look at what it has cost you in this year. And then I would suggest at this comparable point in time next year for A1, you add your actuals for the preceding fiscal year. If we were doing it here, it'd be 23-24, because then we can see trend as well. So I think it just helps us. Budget to budget is useful, but not ultimately what matters. What matters is what you're budgeting and then what you're spending and where those things are going. So my one other question has to do with the narrative about the library projects, which said that construction for the North Sacramento Hagenwood Library was anticipated to begin in September of 26 and completed in June of 27. Now, it's my understanding, based on communications I've had with staff, that the plans for the library are in the building department at the city now for the North Sacramento Hagenwood Library. So if that's the case, why are we looking at not more than a year from now for anticipated construction?
So to your point, the construction project is already underway. The City of Sacramento is working on awarding a contractor to actually do the construction. The grant must be completed in 2027. So
I understand that. Okay, maybe this just was a carryover or something, but the narrative you have says construction is anticipated to start in September of 26 and completed.
It should, honestly, it should say September of 2025.
Okay.
So, yes.
Thank you.
Little
Thank
typo
you.
there.
A typo error, Director Dickinson. Apologies for that.
If people in the community read that, I would be getting lots of phone calls and emails.
You were correct. We anticipate that to start within this calendar year.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that.
It will take all of next year to do, and I think we just slip of the finger in the number. So apologies for that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get it done faster too. Okay. Okay. I appreciate that being clarified. Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So looking at,
Did you second my item? Did you second?
yes, and seconded yet.
Approval of the budget?
Yeah.
Sure, I'll second.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second, but I do have a question regarding the deficit itself, because there are more expenditures than there are revenues. When the state adopts its budget, there's an expectation that the county will have money for Sacramento County, fingers crossed. How much of that will help balance our budget so whatever reserves that are being used can be redirected back into those reserves until we absolutely positively need them over the course of the fiscal year?
I'll let Johnny speak more to that, but I think it's a little more complicated to answer that because of how we do the cost allocating.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can give you an actual number of that. I don't know if Johnny has any indication, but I don't know if it will help as much because it's the reduction in the funding comes directly from the city of Sacramento. So whether it's county funds, I don't know if that's going to shore that up because of the requirements of how we spend that money.
Chair Brewer. So once we close the books for fiscal year 24, in a few short months, we'll have a better idea on the total revenues and expenditures. So once we close the books, then any surplus will be folded back into the respective funds reserves. And I just want to point out that one positive thing about the library is we've been prudent with our budget and our spending plans and how we spend our revenue sources, because we know we do not have the capability to issue bonds or create taxes and the like. So we've been pretty prudent. And so luckily, in building a pretty healthy reserve, this allows us to support the county with the project, the $1.7 million supplemental fund request. And then when the city approached us about the one-time, it's a little confusing, so it's a one-time $4 million split into 2 fiscal years. So we looked at it. Yes, it hurts the pocketbook, but we do have that reserve to support that project. So it's to me, it's a win-win for the city, the county, and the library in general with the different projects.
I'm glad you see it that way, because I feel the same way. And this is prudent. And we're doing it and we're planning for a long term and a long haul. But one of the things I noticed is very telling on planning is when you're looking at parcel tax, when you're looking at the parcel taxes, the city parcel taxes, and seeing how they're going to sunset by 26, 27, but it looks like parcel tax E is going to assume the role of the current 2 parcel taxes.
Yes, it's what we renewed.
Boom, and that's the big help, and that's where the public should really commend themselves in trusting and voting for Measure E last year. It goes a long ways, and I want to commend this board for making that happen. There's something about that alphabet that is really good for this region. There's just something really good about that. But yes, I really like that. And it's really smart. And like I said, when we come back in September, actually when we do a true up, that will give us a better feel for where we're at and where we're heading. I saw a hand up from Director Lopez Taff online. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Director Brewer. Simple question. We talked about the fund reserve many times. I don't know if in our budget packet, there was a reference attachment to that. So we have some visibility to what is in that fund.
Can I bring the slides back up, Jared, or is there a way to bring it back up?
Right there.
So Director Taft, thank you for that question. So Exhibit A1, this gives us a really good, again, 3-year flow of fund balances. So the very last column where you have the unreserved fund balances at June 30, 2026. So these are itemized by the county, City of Sacramento, and the postal taxes. So the county is looking at $21.7 million in unreserved fund balances. And again, it says unreserved, but it's still restricted for library purposes. There are some donated monies, bequests that people had donated to the libraries. But without putting 50 columns, we just mainly focus on the main reserve, which is cash flow and economic uncertainty, and then the unreserved fund balances. And then on the city side, there's about $8.1 million, and Measure E is showing about $7.7 million. So combined, there's about $15.9 million on the city side, and then $21.6 million on the county funding sources.
Got it. Thank you for the direction.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, seeing and hearing no additional questions from directors online or on the dais, we have a motion from Director Talamontes, a second from Director Dickinson. Madam Clerk, may you please call the roll?
Roger Dickinson.
Aye.
Karina Talamontes.
Aye.
Phil Pluckybaum. Katie Maple.
Aye.
Mai Vang.
Yes.
Bill Cerna. Patrick Kennedy. Rich Desmond. Rosario Rodriguez. Pat Hume. Mary Jane Lopez Taft.
Yes.
Rod Brewer.
Aye.
Kevin Spees.
Aye.
Tim Reed. Joe Little.
Yes.
Tanya Kravchuk.
Aye.
Vina Lefkowitz.
Yes.
Nick Blois.
Aye.
And motion passes with 8 members voting.
All right, thank you very much. We have item 7.2 is passed. Now we move on to item number 8, reports, ideas, and questions from board members. Directors, Director Dickinson.
I am informed by the Channel 14 staff that in the back corner of the chambers in that case are the contents of a time capsule that was put together 25 years ago by the county. I haven't had a chance to go up and look at it myself, but I am also told by the Channel 14 staff that there's a video, I think there's an 8-track, believe it or not, of the Board of Supervisors members sealing up this capsule in which I actually appear. And I just wanted, number one, to point this out so everybody could go take a look at it. But number two, to say if that capsule is resealed and opened after 100 years and another 75 years, and I'm here to see it, then that's going to be something to put into the next time capsule.
That's hilarious. Certainly would be.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right.
Any other directors with any comments, ideas, questions? Hearing and seeing none, definitely be at the Sacramento Book Festival on May 31st. Runs from 10 to 4. You can see it online or see the details online. But thank you for showing up and being here today. This meeting is adjourned.